Forensic investigators of Reddit, what are some of the most disturbing and horrific cases you've worked on? EMT, not my call but my co-workers. Get dispatched for vaginal bleeding. Arrive at the home to find a woman sitting in a pool of blood on her bedroom floor. Transport her to the hospital where the doc examines her. He asks where the baby is. What? He states this woman just had a baby. So they go back to the home with police and search the place. My co-worker looks under the bed and sees a bowling ball bag. Opens the bag and finds the strangled dead baby. Holy shit. That took a turn for the worst. My dad was EMTFF in Philly back when that was a thing and he has a few similar. The one that stuck with me that isn't a gruesome reality check. He had a run with a woman on the side of I-95 who had a baby in the back of the cab. He delivers this baby and after performing emergency CPR on this super preemie he turns to the woman and happily tells her the baby was okay. The woman, a North Philly resident, replies, "Who cares? I didn't want the fucking thing anyway." Broke my dad's heart at the time but it's a classic fireside story now. I'm an expert in work-related incidents and am hired to investigate accidents and incidents for large corporations. 2 children fell down an elevator shaft on a building project. Employee of manufacturer in the pharmaceutical industry got his arm ripped off by a powder centrifuge. Retired person was fatally hit by the coupling of a compressed air hose after the hose broke. Industrial accidents scare the shit out of me. My dad worked in a paper mill for 30+ years and saw a lot of awful accidents. The worst one I remember him telling me was when a guy went to cut a sample and lost his balance a bit. His hand went in between the rollers. He said you could hear his fingertips burst and then it degloved his hand. Also have a large steel mill the next town over and there's been a lot of people killed on the job there over the years. Worst I heard about was the guys that have to go inside of some kind of giant oven to clean it. Machine wasn't locked out properly and 2 guys got trapped in there. Think you can imagine the rest. Worked a case involving 2 young sisters, 8 and 4. It was actually 13 and 6, if I recall. This was 20 years ago, and their meth head mom and her boyfriend. Mom was convinced her girls were possessed by demons, so she forced them to take baths in bleach. When that didn't work, she started making them drink bleach. The older girl knew enough to immediately throw up the bleach, and she would drag her sister behind the couches or wherever they could in the house to throw it up. Eventually the little daughter couldn't throw it up anymore and died. She then froze the little sister and proceeded to hack the frozen body into pieces in front of the older sister and then disposed of the pieces somehow. We were sent in to see if we could find the body. Walking into that house, the smell of bleach was overwhelming, and I can still remember all the bleach stains on the carpet. Edit. For those asking about the sentence, here is a link to the story. Changed age of girls from 8 and 4 to 13 and 6. 15-year-old decided to commit suicide on the freeway. It's still not 100% clear if he jumped off the overpass first, but he was reported to be seen on the ground on the freeway by the first person who called it in, who was also the 3rd car to hit him in a matter of minutes. I didn't even have to cut to do the autopsy. We were able to get what we needed through the gaps in his broken spine. This girl from my hometown did something similar a couple years ago. She found out she was 2nd in the class instead of 1st, so she parked on the side of the highway, covered her eyes, and walked in front of a semi. She lived for a few days afterwards. When she finally died, the semi driver also committed suicide. That poor driver. Not minimizing her death, but the guy was just going about his day as usual and her decision changed his life forever to the point where he killed himself. Go to be the guy that stabbed his newborn and 4-year-old before slitting his throat and jabbing the knife into his chest. The worst part was his phone on the bed with numerous texts from his fiancée and mom begging him to not harm the children. Why? Why in these cases is it not sufficient to just kill yourself? Why do these people feel the compulsion to take innocence with them? Disgusting. My dad always swore he was going to take someone with him, so he could maximize the pain he caused. My mom was very relieved when the only person he took was himself. I do fire investigation, and one that stuck with me was a likely mentally disturbed girl started speaking to God at the dinner table and then that night lit her room on fire with her in it. I think about that one a lot. This one is way crazier than the comments above to me. Not trying to sound like a psychopath, but I understand murder a little bit better than self-immolation. Not caring if you burn is such a minfuck. You're either next level crazy or a hardcore monk. Back in my forensic anthropology student days, we worked on an unknown, unclaimed skeleton for class. We'd analyze these skeletons for class as part of our weekly projects. The story goes this Jane Doe was new in town but made some fast acquaintances at a local bar. Jane Doe and her 3 new friends get the bright idea to go rob the local motorcycle gang. The gang has a house in town, but they're not there right now. Just a couple of their old ladies. So these 4 brain surgeons come up with a plan. Jane Doe and another woman will go up to the door in a panic. They'll bang on the door and scream for help. The 2 guys would wait in the bushes and spring out once the door is opened. Then they could rob the house. So with plan in hand, they get to the house. Jane Doe and the lady run up and start banging on the door, screaming bloody murder about someone bring after them. Inside are 2 of the gang's girlfriends' wives. They figure something is up. One gets a shotgun. One gets on the phone and dials 911. The women outside are banging so hard on the door it begins to break and come apart. Lady with the shotgun is scared and has it pointed at the door. The door breaks open and Jane Doe is the first through the door. Shotgun lady lets both barrels rip and deletes Jane Doe's face from eyebrows to chin. This was back in the 90s. I wonder if they ever figured out who she was. Edit. Fixed minor error. Had a father of 2 children chop up his wife in the house whilst the kids were upstairs before sending a text to the mother's parents saying I killed your daughter, call the police, before going to the garage and hanging himself. That's fucking horrifying for the woman's parents. Thank goodness he didn't physically hurt the kids. Had a paranoid schizophrenic male who forced his elderly mother to eat rocks, and I mean a shitload of rocks, to the point where she died. He told police that he was feeding her rocks to weigh her down so God couldn't take her yet. Jesus. Reminds me of a case in the funeral home I worked in. An adult son died from an overdose in his room. Caused his mother to snap. One of her children came over unaware of what happened. Noticed a smell in the house. The mother explained that he was going to wake up like Jesus did. The daughter called 911 and fled the house. She barricaded herself in the house for 5 more days with the body. Recently read a story about a lady's boyfriend who beat her 3-year-old son constantly, then finally to death after he defecated on the carpet. He wasn't being fed and was eating out of the garbage. The mother said she slapped him to wake up and stop pretending he was dead like he usually does after a beating. Once she realized he was dead, she gave him a bath, went to put on her makeup and wig, then began to read the Bible to him, before taking him to the hospital. I did a case once where the home had burnt down. As was always the case, the homeowner was asked to provide a list of everything in the home. Tip: make this list before your house burns down. Most people, not this guy, can't remember, and this is how insurers shortchange you. But I digress. So homeowner emails me a list, all 190 pages of size 12 Arial print single spaces. The first 48 pages were all the books in the house. Every single book, and I mean all of them. Over 3,200 in total, were biographies, memoirs and other books related to serial killers. And then, as if to prove the old saying, it is the ones you least suspect, he was a normal dude, middle-aged etc. wife, 2 kids and so on. Police arrested him 2 months later when the house was demolished and 6 bodies were found in the crawl space under the house. We had an elderly couple that was a murder-suicide, more a mutual suicide, that were found frozen under a foot of nearly perfectly clear ice. Also a family that all except the mother drowned in a kayaking accident. Children's Protective Services worker here. We do forensic interviewing during our investigation, so I'm counting myself in. I watched the autopsy of a 2-month-old infant with suspected cause of asphyxiation from regurgitating too much milk from being overfed. turned into a homicide as they peeled back the infant's scalp to reveal a massive skull fracture and brain bleed from sharp blunt force trauma to a 2-month-old. Thank you for watching and listening to my channel. Feel free to drop a comment and be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification button for the latest video I publish every day. See you on the next video, very Reddit fans.